So for today's talk, we are very proud to welcome and introduce the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Neurology, Dr. Elena Becker-Barroso. So Dr. Elena graduated with a doctor cum laude in molecular biology from the Universidad de Salamanca. And in 2005, she completed a diploma in science communication at Bookmark University of London. After that, she decided to pursue an editorial career. She then joined the Lancet Neurology as a senior editor, and since then became the deputy editor of the journal in 2008, and in 2012 was promoted to the editor-in-chief. Now I have the esteemed pleasure of handing over her today, and she'll be talking about how to get your paper published. Hope you enjoy. Sorry, Dr. Elena, I think you're muted at the moment.
Yeah, I hope that you can all hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you very much, Joshua. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, so late in the evening. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you about what I like the most, which is what I do. As Joshua said, I am the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Neurology, which is one of the many specialty journals of the Lancet group. And for those of you who are perhaps not familiarized with the journal, I think that a good start could be by following us in our Twitter account at the Lancet Neuro. So you can start seeing what we do and what we publish and what we care about. But that said, let's get this started and into the subject matter for today. I was actually invited to talk about how to get published in the Lancet. And I thought that was a little bit too narrow, because actually for most people pursuing an academic career, and a good academic career actually, an accomplished academic career, I mean, publishing a Lancet journal might be an aspiration, might happen or might not happen. And that's all right. That's all right. So I wanted to talk to you about what I think it's really key are the basis for how to get your paper published in academical medical journal in general. And of course, in the Lancet group, but beyond the Lancet group too. So now, now I cannot move my slides. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is just the outline for the talk today. And as you will see, it's a very straightforward talk, very easy, and divided into three parts. I want to start with an introduction, a very short introduction, with very few general considerations about the relevance of publishing. Because I think it's good to reflect a little bit about why we are talking about this afternoon and why this could be of importance for your future, right? Then the core part of the talk will be dedicated to the specific considerations about how to successfully publish your paper. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have some 10 minutes, some good 10 minutes for your questions and any doubts, queries, or whatever the things that I have not mentioned and you are interested in. Of course, please don't be shy. And I know I have a very strong Spanish accent. You might not, I mean, my accent might not be clear enough. So if at the end there are things that you didn't catch, that you are particularly interested in, but you didn't understand me, don't be shy to ask, okay? So let's go for it. And let's start reflecting a little bit about why publishing is important. and why it matters. So what I'm showing you here is actually a cover of the journal, the cover of the August issue, the cover illustration, which actually is an embroidery inspired in one of the classic drawings of Ramon y Cajal. As you know, Ramon y Cajal won the Nobel Prize in 1906, it doesn't matter. But this brilliant man, for many, many years, he wrote some notebooks and he published most of his discoveries and descriptions, fine descriptions, in Spanish. And it was not till all that knowledge was translated and disseminated beyond Spain that the importance of his work was acknowledged. And obviously that was a necessary step for him to win the Nobel Prize with Camillo Golgi. So what I want to say simply is that the dissemination of findings is actually key in the scientific process. So whatever you do, whatever your field of research, if you don't communicate what you are doing, well, for the rest of your colleagues, it's like this is not happening, like it will never took place. So you really need to be aware of how important the publication step is in a research career. I think of the work of researchers as almost like a harvesting process and of trying to get funds and of course all these permissions, ethical consent, legal, admin, etc., and using that to do the research work that will later have to be communicated, disseminated, and discussed with peers all over the world. So here are these two bottlenecks in the process of research, right? Of the work of a researcher. The initial bottleneck of getting money to get your research and getting approval from the ethical, legal committee, all the initial needs for that research. But then the very final bottleneck, which is the one of publication. So obviously, during your many years of training, you usually get a lot of input on how to perform good research, on how to understand the ethical needs of your research, and even the administration needs for requesting permissions for investigations, etc. But there are few occasions to think about the relevance of the publication process. So I'm very pleased that we have some minutes to conversate about this afternoon. Now, as I said, communicating your findings is a necessary step in academic career. It's not sufficient to be a good academic, but it's absolutely necessary. But there is no need to panic because you don't need to publish in the Lancet or in New England Journal of Medicine or in JAMA to accomplish a successful research career. Actually, the offer of journals is immense. And actually, the last time I checked in this archive that is called, this platform that is called PubMed, where all academic journals are listed, there are more than 30,000 of them. So the options are enormous. And actually, just for medical sciences, you get about 5,000 academic journals out there. So the offer is such that there is a brand new branch of science called bibliometrics that is actually dedicated to study academic publication. So obviously, this is a complex ecosystem with with many different branches, but what matters is that you actually have a plethora of options when communicating your findings, your ideas, or your interests. Now, let's enter into the core matter of this talk, which is actually what needs to be done to accomplish publication success. And I listed here the 3 basic steps. So first of all, the most important thing is, well, this is something that obviously George Orwell said many years ago, which is that a good writer, the first thing a good writer needs is to have something to say, right? And this is not only just for literature or the types of writings, this is also for scientific writing, academic writing, right? The first thing is to have something relevant to say. And of course, there is a lot of thought that you need to invest on that to understand what's your message, what is the take-home message, and what is the audience that you want to target with that message. These are apparently easy steps, but these are the most complex steps of the whole process, which will lead you to take this message and targeting the right audience, well, will lead you to the right journal in which to publish your research. Now, be aware, because in future, when you start your academic careers, when you start doing your PhDs or doing your fellowships, there will be many occasions in which your senior peers will invite you to participate in a research project and eventually will actually choose a journal in which that project will be published and work this list upside down. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, like instead of ABC, CBA. So it's very common and a very common mistake to just target a journal first, say, I'm going to publish this in the Lancet Neurology, for instance, or I'm going to publish this in the Lancet, and then work this out backwards, like, okay, so let's see what I have to say and how I'm going to say it. But I really want to publish this in the Lancet Neurology. Well, that's normally done because academics are very, I think they are very, they have too much consideration for the impact factor, which is a measure of the citations that the articles in a journal have, and it's an average. It's an average that actually evaluates the quality of the editors in their choices. No? It doesn't evaluate the authors of each article in the journal. But this is a common misconception. So people will choose a journal first because of a high impact factor, and then will work backwards on the way in which they write their paper. Wrong. Many mistakes, a lot of time and effort will be avoided if things will be done as I'm showing in this very simple slide here. So please remember this. First, think about what you want to say and to whom. And of course, when you are a young investigator and you are starting your research career, I mean, coming up with a take-home message is not particularly easy, because you need to think about the findings, you need to think about what in them is particularly relevant, why, and you need some guidance on how to start writing your discoveries and your thoughts around those discoveries. And the good news is that that guidance exists and is quite detailed. So my first recommendation to you will be to start writing your findings very early on in the process, as early as you can. So jot down your thoughts, jot down the feedback that you receive from others, jot down whatever the consideration that you have about the methodology that you are using, about the things that surprise you, that don't make sense initially maybe, or they are paradoxically, whatever. Jot down your paper as soon as you can. And the way in which you can pursue your paper is by using the following materials. This is the most important slide of this talk, okay? And I would like, if only one take-home message will come out of this talk, this should be it, that all of you who want to eventually publish a paper one day will have this website address as a bookmark in your computers, Equator Network. So this is the place where you need to go before starting writing your paper, okay? And why is that? This is because the reporting of clinical findings is a very stereotyped process. So there is very little leeway for you to be imaginative, original, creative, or I don't know, or literary oriented. Your peers will expect a very standardized presentation of what you have to say. And this is the place where you can find help to do that. So, for instance, when you come to this website, you will find this tag of toolkits in which you find the way on how to write a great research paper using reporting guidelines. So if you look into the details listed here, which you can come back after my talk, of course, and I will invite you to do so, they write, before you submit your paper to a journal, you need to consider whether the article will achieve its purpose, which is a different way to say what I've mentioned to you a couple of minutes ago. It's like, think of what you want to say and to whom. That needs to be your frame of work, okay? This is the frame of work. And then you use the tools that you will find in here, the very detailed tools, very simple, we will see it now, and start building up your paper. So for instance, this site has this sort of algorithms that you can follow very, very easy, regardless of the type of investigation that you are doing. So for the sake of illustrating what I mean, let's think of your first paper, which will be simply, it might be not so simple, but it could be a case report to start with, right? So you come across an interesting interesting patient with a complicated differential diagnosis, with a complicated case for whatever the reason, and you think, well, I believe that this is an interesting case to be communicated and to educate somebody else. So how do you do that? So you come here to the Equator website, you come to this algorithm very easily, you will find it immediately, and you go step by step here. So for instance, was the research in humans? Well, yes, of course it was in humans. It's a patient, it's a case. You want to report the case of a patient. So yes. Did your research generate quantitative data? Well, no, because in general, well, you have an n equal 1 with no comparisons, with no statistical analysis, but a proper description of a difficult case, or difficult or interesting or notable for whatever the reason, right? Okay, so let's go on. Did you pull the results of previous studies? Is this a review? Obviously, well, in general, it will be a no. So then we go on. Do you describe a clinical case or a series of cases? Yes, you want to describe one patient. So you come here and you see CARE. And CARE is the name of the guidelines that you need to use to describe your case report. And when you go back to the Equator Network website and look for the care guidelines, you will find materials like this. So in here, as you can see, the system very much writes the paper for you, because you really need to read these questions one by one very carefully and complete this information. And in doing so, believe me, you have written your paper. And you have written your paper in an exquisite, very, very nice gold standard way that your peers expect, and actually most academic journals will very much value, because the most, a majority, I would say, like, well, definitely the top academic journals, but almost everyone in the academic environment has to comply. Every journal has to comply with these guidelines. And actually what an editor will do is will ask you to revise your paper once and again if the paper fails to meet these standards. So if you start here, the amount of time and effort that you will spend down the line will be much, much less. I really, this is for sure, I can tell you. And so this is just an example of how you can work out with the Equator system and your findings the kind of paper that you need to write, and they will guide you, and they will, with all this information that you have in here, believe me, you can very easily or relatively easily write a paper. So, taking for granted that you have the proper take-home message and your aims with a take-home message. So aims meaning the audience that you want to target, right? Whether you want to target general physicians or super specialty within neurology, say, for instance, or neurologists at large, depending on the take-home message, the relevance of the take-home message that you need to disseminate. And you have written your paper according to the Equator guidelines. So now you choose the journal. Now you can choose the journal because now you know what your product is. You see, I mean, this is a ridiculous example, but I think of this as, say that you are not a researcher, but a farmer, and you produce whatever, broccoli or a cabbage, and you want to sell that in the market, but you go to a flower shop. And the flower shop, well, some flower shops, they sell cabbages, right, as decoration, but many don't. So it is important to place your cabbage in the right shop. So it's the same here. Once you have your paper constructed, built up according to the Equator guidelines, then you have a lot of information to start thinking about what is the kind of flower shop or the journal that will be happy to get your cabbage. Okay, I know that this is, I'm sure that most of you will be smiling or possibly laughing at me, and with good reason. But this is just for the sake of you remembering this for many years to come, I hope. So now, how to choose the journal? There are not easy shortcuts for that, because to choose the adequate journal, you need to be familiarized with the journals that are available out there, obviously. And that's not something that can be done without making the effort of, checking the journals that are out there from time to time, having a look in their websites, checking the general neurology journals or neurosurgery journals for citations and references to other journals, and start getting an idea of how the academic research in your area perceives a journal against others, right? So this takes some time, because obviously you cannot get familiarized with the Lancet Neurology just because of this conversation today, right? So for instance, if you check up the Lancet Neurology every month, we are a monthly journal, you will see that a table of contents that is very much like this one that I'm showing you here. So once you have your paper done and built up, you have a draft of the paper that you want to submit, then you can think of where that paper will fit in whatever different sections of the journal, because obviously the journal is not going to be able to create a section for you if the remit of the paper, the topic covered by the paper, is not that the journal usually covers. So let me explain this with a couple of very easy examples, I think. So for instance, if you get to read the Lancet Neurology on a regular basis, you will notice that we never ever publish animal studies, right? We only publish data from human beings. Believe me, every week we get papers submitted on animal models that obviously we have to reject, because we don't, we cannot consider these papers. These papers are out of remit for us. They are out of the scope of the journal. So obviously this is a waste of time. Not for us, because this is our job, but this is a waste of time for the researchers of papers that are sometimes very good, but we cannot consider because animal studies are not part of the Lancet Neurology. Neuro-oncology. If you read the Lancet Neurology, you will realize that for the past 15 years, we have never ever published an original research article on neuro-oncology. So if you come to us with a neuro-oncology paper, it will have, it will be very unlikely that we could do an exception and consider your paper, okay? So these are the kind of considerations that I mean, okay? So my advice to be familiarized with as many journals as you can, because then you will know your options, okay? Then, of course, every journal has a very detailed section of information online called the information for authors. And if you are not sure about what they like and what the sort of papers that they like to publish, go there, check it up, check the information for authors. And if with that information you still are not completely sure, drop the editor an email and say, well, I have this paper. What do you think? Is this adequate for your journal, or I shouldn't bother? I should go to another place, okay? So I think these tips are, of course, very, very easy and very simple, but they are very important. And believe me, a lot of time will be saved, and a lot of frustration, if people will realize these very simple things, extremely simple things. So for instance, another important consideration in choosing the journal, it's knowing what the editors are going to do with your paper once the paper is submitted. And obviously what they are going to do is to, well, most likely is to send that paper, if this is a paper that is within remit and within the expectations of the journal, they will send it to peer review. But journals do very different peer review processes. And in some occasions, you will value a very thorough and tedious and long peer review process as the one that we do. And in other cases, when you are just trying to quickly publish something like a very interesting and educational case report, maybe you want to skip a long, tedious process. I think that our peer review process is quite strict, because we not only do an evaluation on the design and methodology and the quality of the data of the paper, which is the standard, right? So all journals are gonna judge that. But we also value originality, which means novelty, right? So we like things that have never been explored before, or that are actually breakthroughs, or that are breaking ground for whatever reason. And we're going to judge also the relevance of the findings in the current clinical context. And of course, these two things in red here in this slide, these are subjective things. These are subjective things. So the process can end up being quite complicated and quite a long discussion, debate in between the authors, the peer reviewers, and the editors, okay? So I think it's good to know, to try to understand what's the peer review process that the journal that you chose will apply to your paper once you have submitted. And that said, never be discouraged, okay? Never be discouraged. Publishing in the top academic journals is very difficult. It's a very difficult process, and sometimes quite frustrating. In our case, I mean, in the Lancet group, we can send out to peer review less than 20% of the papers that we receive. And actually, our acceptance rate is below 5% of the papers that we receive. So that means that 95% of the sometimes very nice papers that we receive actually cannot be considered. They need to be published elsewhere. And that's all right. You will get your paper elsewhere, and eventually the paper will be published. So don't be ever discouraged by a rejection, or by very critical reviewers' comments. The process is meant to be helpful in making the best possible paper out of your initial draft. And that should be the ultimate end. And I think that with that said, I'm gonna finish up reminding you about this bookmark. So if you ever want to write a paper, please bookmark this site. Please use this site. It's gonna be very easy to use. Follow the algorithm, follow the guidelines with the very detailed checklists. They have plenty of examples that you can go and contrast. They have a lot of help. And the system will basically write the paper for you and will allow you to do a beautiful discussion of your findings, because they will be so well described and organized that I think the process can be actually quite straightforward. So please, this is the only take-home message that I have for you this afternoon. So I think it's easy, straightforward, and very simple. And in any case, if you have any specific questions about the Lancet group, the Lancet journals, my journal in particular, or anything else about writing for a medical readership, and you are too shy to ask today, drop me an email, and I will be very happy to keep in touch. And with that, I think we can start with questions and answers section, and just acknowledging also the team of people I work with, obviously.
Wow. First and foremost, thank you so much for that insightful talk. I don't know about everyone, but for me, I really enjoyed the flower shop analogy. So I'm glad you put that in there. There were quite a few questions that came to me directly, and I think some are in the chat as well, but a lot of people were just saying thank you so much for the talk. They really appreciate it, and they felt that they learned a lot. So the first one that came to me was a medical student, and they were wondering about some of the basic skills they can develop and work on right now in order to eventually publish.
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, it's like everything else. It's a question of practice, right? So writing is a question of practice. The more you write, the better you write. So I will encourage anyone to start writing papers, because you can start actually, well, as I said, writing case reports, describing a case report, and good detailed medical description is not an easy thing to do. And the more you think about it, the more complicated it becomes. So with all the nuisances and different aspects to it. So I will recommend anyone to start with a case report, for instance, if they are medics. Then if they are biomedics, they can start with small research projects that can end up in describing findings with a couple of figures or a table, like a research letter type of thing. So, well, it's just practice, 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 like anything else. And of course, well, I believe that if you, for instance, get familiarized with the Lancet Neurology and you read our papers every month, or the ones that you are interested in because of the field or because of the taste of the day or the fashion of the day, you will see, of course, you can learn from others as well. You can learn, I think any original research article in the journal illustrates what I'm saying now, that the beauty of describing your findings in a clear, detailed, and standardized manner as well. And yeah, but that's basically it. You need to write a lot to be able to do it well and to feel at ease with it. But you get there, no problem. I mean, everyone. Your mentors, the people, your supervisors, they all went through this and they got it. So it's not it's everyone can do it. Believe me that the tasks that you are doing and the tests that you are doing at present, they are much more difficult than this. So obviously the difficult part is getting findings and getting that take-home message, right? It's getting something to say that George Orwell used to say, it's like, that's the difficult side. But once you have that, jot down, start writing. That would be my advice.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much for that. So one of the questions that was sent directly to me as well, they really appreciated and loved all the advice that you spoke about with guidelines in terms of writing protocol pieces, and especially the website you shared as well. But they wanted to know if that website also contained information about guidelines for more like opinion pieces or non-systematic literature reviews, things that are more...
No, that's a very good question, because obviously, academic publishing is also about publishing narrative reviews, publishing hypotheses, publishing letters, and that the format of those papers depends very much and varies very much in every journal. So for instance, our reviews in the Lancet Neurology are quite standardized as well. If you go to Nature reviews in neurology, they are different, but they are quite standardized as well. And in those cases, my advice will be to contact the editors and ask. It's like, well, I have this idea. I have this hypothesis in mind for a couple of ideas I would like to falsify experimentally, refute. So how can I start this debate? I would like to write a personal view, a viewpoint, or even just a letter to express my discontent with people exploring other ways in the field, right? And the editor will guide you with the right format that you need to use. Normally, the information for authors in every journal will include some guidance on that, on how to write opinion pieces. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. Another question sent directly to me. I know you spoke about, ways that students can get involved with publishing, but another student wanted to know, were there any other opportunities for students to get involved with the Lancet? It's a very general question, but
of course, yeah. So we have internship programs. Actually, well, only one at present because of the weird situation with the pandemic. I hope things will improve next year and in 2023. And yeah, if anyone is interested in doing, I mean, in participating in that, I would be very pleased to give them more information about who they need to contact, the kind of information that we need to have to select students. And obviously, if you want to learn more by coming here to the editorial offices and spending one day with us, seeing how we work and the nitty-gritty of our editorial work, I would be very pleased to accommodate that. Yeah, definitely. So just please just write to me. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Sounds like a
If you really want to do that, obviously not this year, possibly from springtime onwards. Okay, because yeah, but if we with time we can organize that.
Oh, thank you. Sounds like a great opportunity for people. So another question that came in that was asked in the general chat. So we said you spoke about making sure like you draft and prepare your publication before you send it off to like the place to approve it, the publications to actually publish it. They were wondering, would you also advise having some vague idea about which publications you would like to target before sending it instead of narrowing it down to just one specific one?
Well, that will come to you naturally with time. You see, because once you get familiarized with the ecosystem of journals available to you, obviously, as you write your paper, that idea will start consolidating in your brain. Like, okay, I mean, this very much looks like a paper for brain. This very much looks like a paper for JAMA neurology. This very much looks like a paper that I've just read in the Lancet Neurology, right? So that will come, but obviously that situation will require some time. It's not, for those of you who have never done this, and I mean, and the ecosystem doesn't mean much to you more than, I don't know, a forest full of trees that you don't have all these flower shops that you cannot decide among, no? So for those of you, I think you, what I will do if I were you, I will write first the draft, and then I will consult with a mentor, with a senior person that could guide you towards the, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 journals that could be suitable, actually. And then you start that exploration and eventually submit to one of those journals. And as I said, if that journal says no thanks, then don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged, because you have another 2,000 journals possibly to choose from, okay? So the paper will get published. And but this is a learning process, okay? And yeah, so that will be it. Yeah.
Okay. Another really good question that's come in. So they said there's been a lot of talks about new approaches to modelings of publishing, such as preprints and open access. And they wanted to know, what do you think the future of publishing and peer review is going to look like?
Oh God, I wish I knew. And if I will have the glass ball to, I mean, that would be fantastic. Actually, I don't know because this is, of course, this is very much about technology, right? And I don't think, well, I cannot, I am not a very particularly wise digital person. So who knows what's happening over the next 5 or 10 years, right? And of course, technology will change the way in which we disseminate and communicate. That's the bottom line. Now, preprints, open science. I mean, I am 200% for it, okay? So these are fantastic steps that took quite a long time to realize. We actually work with a preprint archive. So for any of you who want to deposit your draft, your manuscript in a preprint archive first, to have an initial interaction with your peers and see how people receive that, we have that platform available for you too. And well, the Lancet Neurology, for instance, is a hybrid journal, which means that we do open access and traditional publishing, but our aspiration is to become a full open access journal in a few years' time. And I mean, I think that's the future that possibly, that respects us, all academic publishing, open science. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Of course, I mean, it will be, maybe we could do someday, in another occasion, a good debate about open science, etc. But I think, I mean, I think that nobody these days questions that that's the way forward. Wow. Definitely.
Sounds very promising. Wow. Another question that's coming directly to me. They want to know if you foresee any changes in if you foresee any changes in how research information will be presented in the future. And they gave an example. Instead of having an introduction section, would you see things like having an infographic instead?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I mean, I think we can link this with the previous question, right? It's all about technology available, and of course, I mean, how cost effective that technology is for publishers and so, right? Because of course, I mean, when I started here, we hardly published any videos, for instance. Now videos are state of the art, right? We publish many papers with videos. We publish many podcasts, for instance, interviewing the authors of the papers, explaining the papers, discussing them with other people. And so the content of an article is becoming, augmented reality, right? Of course, it would be very nice in future to link the article with the data set, for instance, if that's feasible, with the different links to the protocol of that original research, or I don't know, different guidelines, methods. I mean, like the article becoming just a hub for understanding the whole process of that piece of research. And I think that's possibly the future, like articles being sort of meta articles, which people will find if they want lots of information. Now, of course, the question comes as to what will be the right balance in presentation, because some people might not need all those details and appendixes and extra information, but just some clear description of findings and interpretation for the clinical practice. So that's a good challenge for us all, authors, reviewers, editors, to find the right presentation that is on one hand palatable and accessible for as many people as possible, and then for the sophisticated researcher and for those that are keen on that particular piece of research and want to follow up with it or want to explore further, to have as much information as they need to replicate the study, to reanalyze the data, to use part of that data in their own study. So I think the possibilities are, with technology, they're going to be,
Wow.
incredible when your time comes to do research. Yes. It's going to be incredible. Yes.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So another question that was sent to me directly. So they were wondering if you had already published a pilot paper in the Lancet Neurology, and now you're conducting the main study with more rigid procedures with multiple centers. Is this a paper that's more likely to now be selected?
Well, you know better than me that in clinical practice there are this pyramid of guiding evidence, right? The top of which being phase 3 clinical trials, right? And because we want to change clinical practice with what we publish, obviously we are very keen to publish phase 3 trials. Now, that said, depending on the research question, as I mentioned in the slide of our peer review criteria, originality is very important for us. So sometimes a breakthrough in one field, even if preliminary to change clinical practice right now, we consider it of being of such significance in the field that even a small pilot will be published. Actually, I can tell you that I shouldn't, because the paper is still in the pipeline, and I'm not sure whether the authors have received the acceptance letter so far. So I wouldn't, but you will see, I hope, very soon, an original research paper in the pages of the Lancet Neurology done in 6 patients, 6, N = 6, okay? And still, that will be published side by side with a phase 3, okay, in a different field, with a different, obviously, with different research question, different, so yeah, it's very much depending on the research question and the relevance that that answer has at a given time, and the significance of that finding in the field. And that's the reason why we need peer reviewers, right? For your peers to tell us how they feel about it. Yeah, but yeah, obviously, yeah, phase 3, I mean, one will think that the chances are higher, obviously, for if you are involved in a phase 3 clinical trial, the chances for that trial, if it's well done, to end up in New England possibly are high. But that doesn't mean that a nice pilot study wouldn't end up in a very, very top academic journal. Yeah, even if it's not practice changing, but it might be a breakthrough. And I mean, many fields are, I mean, so of course in neurology, so stroke, for instance, is a very sophisticated field, right? As you know, so sophisticated in the sense that the advances in the last couple of decades have been spectacular, and the clinical trials that are taking place are just phenomenal. So, of course, you cannot compare that field with, I don't know, with a rare muscular dystrophy, in which the approach might be genetic, and you might start with an intervention that targets a molecule and in few patients, right? So obviously a large cardiovascular or cerebrovascular trial and a gene therapy trial, of course, have nothing or very little in common. And one might be pilot, the other might be a phase 3, and they might both end in the appropriate medical journal for different reasons. So yeah, it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say without talking about real life materials. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you for that answer. Really appreciate it. This is another question that was sent to me. So what advice would you give to students or junior doctors in terms of finding a good research supervisor or mentor to aid in them publishing some research?
Oh, well, that's a difficult one. That's a difficult one. Well, I think you guys are still given the possibility of rotations, right? Is that correct? Yeah. So you will do 2 or 3 rotations, and you need to use those carefully. Okay. Be very attentive. See what's going on. Whether you feel supported, you feel understood, you feel that people working with you take good care of you. But in my own experience, which is just anecdotal, of course, what is most important is that the research question that you are given to explore is important for you. So it's something that you really care about, something that you are passionate about. So if that's the case, then I think in general, everything works out very well, in general. So yeah, I think perhaps a little, not so practical, but passionate advice will be try to find a research question that really, really interests you, that is close to your heart. It's close to what you really think it's important. It really matters.
Well,
for whatever reason. I mean, the reason might look stupid at the beginning, like, well, this is just, I fancy doing neuropathological slides, maybe that's just, but the reason that matters for you, whatever the reason that matters for you, and then, during your rotation time, you will compare and see who can help you out better at that respect.
Okay. Wow. Thank you very much. I think we have time for just one more question. I hope that's okay. It's 7 o'clock now.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Cool. And they wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for the talk and presentation. They thought it was really well done and organized. They wanted to know, apart from reading the Lancet Neurology, of course, but what other tools of choice would you say that people should do to follow the trends in neurological research?
Well, of course, the general medical journals, they all publish very good neurology papers. I'm talking here, New England Medical Journal, JAMA, the Lancet. Of course, in the Nature journals and the Cell Press, particularly Neuron, sometimes you find very beautiful papers also in human beings, right? Not just preclinical.
Yeah.
PLOS Medicine and the PLOS journals, they have beautiful content. And then in neurology, well, I very much like Brain. Right? I think Brain is has the gravitas and the tradition that none of us can possibly, we will need another 200 years to get close to that. But so Brain I like very much. But I like specialty journals as well, like the Movement Disorders Journal. I think they're doing a great job. Headache, they're doing a great job. Epilepsia, of course, JAMA Neurology, of course, Neurology, of course, the European Journal of Neurology. Who else? I think these are among my favorites, but I of course I have more. Of course, Nature Reviews in Neurology. The reviews in Nature Reviews in Neurology are beautiful. They are wonderful, and then also translational journals like Science Translational Medicine, like eBiomedicine in the Lancet group. I think this will be. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that when I leave the Zoom meeting, I will be like, I forgot this and that. Anyway, I think that I mentioned Brain, and I think that's my favorite.
That's good. That's a good list to start off with, definitely. But yeah, I think that's most of the questions now, if not all of them. Thank you so much for the talk today. We had a lot of people in today, and I can say like we all just thoroughly enjoyed it and really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Please allow me to remind you about our Twitter feed, which you can see there, the Lancet Neuro. And I think that's a nice way to start familiarizing with what we do. And for us and for other journals, all of them have Twitter feeds and presence in social media. So we have a Facebook page as well, so whatever you like. But I think that's a nice, fun way to start seeing how our content is and what we publish and the kind of research questions that we like to disseminate.
Awesome. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joshua, very much for organizing this.
No worries. It was
Lovely.
honestly, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely.
So yeah, thank you everyone so much for attending. Also thanks to Dr. Becker-Barroso because she's also allowed us to record this and put this on YouTube. So this will be going up on YouTube in the next few days on the official NANSIG YouTube channel. Maybe a little bit of a shameless plug here, but I wanted to plug in our next talk, which will be our journal club, and it will be happening on the 8th of December, which is a Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. And we'll be discussing the Future GB trial. The Future GB trial, which will be hosted and presented by Professor Puneet Plaha. So we would love to see you guys there if you can. There's a medal link in the chat, and completing this, basically you just have to fill in some feedback for us and you'll get a certificate for attendance. So thank you everyone so much for attending. Really appreciate it and hope everyone is able to take away those take-home messages at least.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.